When you think self-concept, you think I love myself. And when you think everyone is you pushed out, you get confused. Or at least I did at first, so I'm bringing you down with me. However, in this video, I'm going to deep dive into both of these topics to really help you understand what they are, how you can utilize them, and how you can go forward in the best possible way to manifest your desires. Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back. My name is Matthew. I'm a manifestation coach who has helped many people create some amazing things in their lives. So if you want to create some amazing things in your life, check down below in the comment section or the description. You'll see the links to my website where you can see my coaching solutions. If you could drop me a like and a comment on this video just to let me know you like this kind of content going forward. And when you subscribe to the channel, make sure to click that bell icon so you don't miss one of those videos. I look forward to seeing all of your amazing comments and working with whoever comes to me. And now let's get into this video. The reason I've chosen to go with self-concept and everyone is you pushed out is because generally they go hand in hand. You can't work on one without the other, and you can't really work on the other without one. So what I intend to do is explain what self-concept is, explain what everyone is you pushed out is, combine the two so you can see them as a single entity instead of two separate ones, and then give you the tools you need to go forward to make the best out of this huge iceberg of a topic. Now, in very simplified terms, self-concept is how you see yourself. It's what you perceive to be true about yourself. So take any generic affirmations tape you see online. I'm chosen. I'm unique. I'm good enough. I'm attractive. I'm magnetic. I'm special. I'm smart. Those kinds of statements, they are working on your self-concept because they are shifting how you perceive yourself to be. They are shifting the truth that you hold about yourself. Now, I do very much believe that those kinds of statements are just about scratching the surface of what self-concept actually is, because like I said, it's an iceberg of a topic. But before I get into the huge deep dive and blow your mind with that, let me explain what everyone is you pushed out is. Everyone is you pushed out has some confusion about it, so I want to clear it up right here, right now. There are people out there, and by no fault of their own, because there's a lot of misinformation online, but there are a lot of people out there that believe that everyone is you pushed out means that they are a replica of you pushed out. An example of this that I received in a comment the other day, a person said that their specific person had a lot of narcissistic traits. However, they themselves didn't really show any. So they were very confused as to how this person was showing up for them despite the fact that they're not a narcissist. So how come this person is? So they must have obviously had the understanding that by everyone as you pushed out, it means they are quite literally you. So anyone I personally would encounter would have the same characteristics as me personally. That's not the case. Everyone as you pushed out means they are your assumptions pushed out. Everyone is what you assume to be true pushed out. So let's say, for example, you're a female and you have this assumption that men ain't yeah? You will more than likely come across a lot of men that fit into that category of men ain't. The reason being, they are your assumptions pushed out, not you personally pushed out. That is what everyone is you pushed out means. They are your assumptions pushed out. So if you want to shift the way that someone is treating you, everyone is you pushed out wouldn't necessarily mean that you need to start being different in order for them to be different. Now, yes, you can, and that probably would have an impact. But even if you shift yourself, but still perceive them to be the way they are, that will keep them the way they are. Now, this is where the two kind of combine together. There are many people that have said that they have an amazing self-concept and everyone reflects that, except for their specific person, or except for their manager, or except for their parents. This is why you can have an amazing self-concept but still assume a certain thing to be a certain way. So if I feel like I'm amazing and the most unique and attractive man that has ever existed, many people will reflect that. But if I still see my specific person as seeing me as ugly or boring or not good enough, everyone else that I don't have these separate assumptions towards will start to reflect my self-concept. But my dominant assumption about this person, about my specific person, will also have to reflect. This is why so many people get caught up when they feel like they've got an amazing self-concept, but their person just still isn't reflecting it. It's because it goes deeper than just, I'm good enough, I'm special, I'm unique. And they are definitely great to start with. By all means, if you're doing it, continue, but that just about scratches the surface. So this is why self-concept work and everyone is you pushed out combine. So for the purposes of explaining this, I'm going to go forward referring to it as concept involving self. When I say that, you know that I'm referring to everyone as you pushed out and self-concept, okay? So that is the very brief explanations of what self-concept is, how you perceive yourself, what you perceive about yourself to be true, and everyone as you pushed out. The way that you assume things to be is how other people will reflect that. They are not you pushed out. They are not many Matthews replicated into my life. They are how I assume females, or how I assume people to see me, or how I assume people above a certain age, or things like that. They are my assumptions pushed out. And for the rest of the video, I'm going to refer to it as concept involving self. Now into the deep dive, and I really do recommend you take notes. In my experience, there are 4 key components to your concept involving self, and 2 of those components directly impact everyone as you pushed out, which is why I believe they can be combined as a singular whole. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the 4 key components, and then individually I'm going to go into each one of them on a big deep dive and explain them and explain how you can utilize them going forward. So starting with just the explanation, the first one is your self-concept. The most important one in my opinion, but the stuff you see on YouTube is very much just scratching the surface. I do believe that it goes much deeper than just I'm magnetic, I'm good enough, I'm worthy, I'm deserving. But it's basically just the way that you perceive yourself to be true. The second one, your perception of the topic involving yourself. So you can have different self-concepts depending on the topic. You can see yourself as amazing with money, but terrible in relationships. And that will reflect in having loads of money coming in and awful relationships. Or vice versa. You can see yourself to be the most magnetic person that brings in the best relationships. But when it comes to money, you can't seem to get out of debt. And that will reflect. So this shows that we can have different self-concepts depending on the specific topic. So let's take a relationship, for example. If you perceive, let's take me for an example. If I have the assumption of women ain't because that is my view on relationships, or how women show up in relationships for me, I will come across women that reflect that. So that is how everyone is you pushed out, because my assumption is women ain't I don't have luck in relationships, therefore I come across women who reflect that. And vice versa, if I think that I just seem to have the most healthy relationships and I'm so lucky when it comes to relationships, I'll come across women that reflect that. So the second one is how you perceive the topic that you're wanting to basically get a desire in. So that's obviously the first one that also includes everyone as you pushed out. The third one, and this is another one that includes everyone as you pushed out, that is how you perceive the other people involved in that topic. So let's again take a relationship. If I work on my self-concept, using the example that everyone talks about of I've worked on my self-concept but my specific person isn't reflecting it, they've worked on themselves, they've worked on their self-concept, they've done all the I'm magnetic, I'm worthy and I'm deserving, but they've not shifted how they perceive their specific person to see them, and therefore their specific person reflects the original assumption, not the self-concept one, because more than likely they still hold that one more dominantly in their mind. This is why people that you don't really care about or don't have much of a story with or don't know at all will reflect all your good self-concept work, but your specific person won't. It's because you need to also shift how you perceive your specific person to perceive you as well as how you perceive yourself. So this is the second everyone is you pushed out. I'm assuming my person thinks that I'm boring, therefore they reflect to me that I'm boring, even if I've been saying to myself, I'm interesting and unique, because I'm still assuming them to see me a certain way. And the fourth and final one is how you operate from a self-perspective standpoint. Now, a brief explanation, and like I said, we'll go deeper into this. Someone earning £20,000 a year will have a completely different mindset to someone earning £60,000 per year. Just off the top of my head, they might have more debt, they might be more concerned looking at labels of clothing and stuff like that. Whereas someone earning £60,000 a year more than likely wouldn't be in debt, and they'll be, they wouldn't even care about clothing labels. They'll be the one tipping the waiters and waitresses 30% instead of 20%, all of those kinds of things. So the fourth component is, are you operating? How do you see yourself from the perspective of what you desire or what you currently are? What is your self-concept? What is your self-perspective of thoughts, feelings, and actions when it comes to your desire? Are you in line with what you want, or are you not? Are you operating as the version of yourself? Are you seeing yourself as someone earning 60,000, or are you seeing yourself as someone earning that 20,000 still? Because you can affirm over and over that I'm earning £60,000 per year and get it, but if you haven't shifted yourself to match that, this is why I've included this into your concept involving self, you will still be thinking as though you earn 20,000, and therefore your reality will begin to match it. You may have £60,000 a year in your bank account, but if you're still looking at clothing labels because you're concerned if you can afford it, you'll start showing to your subconscious mind that maybe you can't afford it. And then you'll go back to the original 20,000 because that's the way that you're dominantly operating. So that's the fourth component. I hope that makes sense. And now we're about to get into the deep dive of every single one of them. So starting with your self-concept. The reason I perceive this to be the most important one is because generally it will have a knock-on effect to every single one of the others. If you address this properly, you more than likely won't have to do too much work on the others to really get what it is that you want. However, there may still be an element of needing to do so, so I will, of course, go deeper into it. But your self-concept, the whole I'm magnetic, I'm attractive, I'm this, I'm that, I'm all these amazing things, I think it's very much deeper than that. I think a lot of the time, especially if something negative has happened to you, as in like a breakup or you've lost a job that you thought you were like going to keep forever or something like that, it can really knock you. Now, I think a lot of the time, and this is reflected in a lot of my clients that I've worked with, these things such as I'm attractive or I'm good enough, or like I'm attractive, I'm unique, I'm special, they are more symptoms to a deeper wound. The way that I like to see it is you may have a limiting belief or a core belief going on internally that is a deep wound. Now, this deep wound will obviously bleed outward. That bleeding comes in the form of other things that are more symptoms of the deeper problem, not the deeper problem itself. So let's say, for example, I have this deep wound of I'm not good enough, maybe because my parents never gave me attention when I was younger, so I feel like I'm always trying to do more and more and more and more to get the other person's attention. That's my deep wound. Now, that could reflect outward in the form of me being a people pleaser, people not giving me the time of day, me feeling like I'm too boring, me feeling like if I don't talk to them, they're not going to talk to me, those kinds of things. Now, by saying stuff like I'm unique, I'm special, I'm all of these things, you're addressing the symptoms of the wound, not the wound itself. You are addressing the bleeding by wiping it away and not actually addressing the deep wound, i.e. the actual self-concept problem. Therefore, if you keep, let's say for example, the symptom is feeling unattractive, you could say I'm attractive all you want, and that may help you feel more attractive. But because that deep wound has never been addressed, it's going to continue to bleed out and it will come up in a different way. And then you'll start feeling, oh, well, I thought that I was attractive, but they're still not giving me attention. So maybe it's because I'm boring. Then you start working on the element of yourself being boring. Well, oh, now I'm really interesting, but they're still not showing up for me in the way that I want them to. Maybe it's because I'm too weird for them. And then you start working on your element of being weird or just stuff like that. You get where I'm going with it. But the reason why it keeps showing up in different ways is because you've not actually addressed the deep wound of feeling as though you are important enough to people to give you their attention, which is obviously what the example is. This may not be you specifically, but this could be the example. Therefore, it's going to continue to bleed, and every time you do these generic, over-the-top self-concept affirmations, you're wiping away the blood, but never actually addressing the wound, which means it's going to continue to bleed in different ways. So, the actual self-concept work that you're going to want to be doing is to look deeper and understand what your actual wound is and then address the wound itself. Now, what I recommend you do to really figure this out is get a deep understanding of every single symptom, i.e. every single sort of surface level thing that you feel like is going wrong, and then look deeper and see what's between the lines. So for example, let's say that you get a pen and paper, you write out a list and you've got unattractive, boring, too weird, not got enough going on in your life, those four. All of those things show a reflection of me as I am right now is not good enough for my specific person or not good enough for whatever the desire is, yeah? Which means even if you feel like you're attractive by working on it, you've never actually addressed the idea that you need to be, that as you are, you're good enough. you'll constantly feel like you need to change things because that's what the deep wound is. So every time you work on something, another thing that you feel you need to change is going to keep coming up. So now we've understood the actual deep-rooted, the tip at the bottom of the iceberg self-concept problem. We can now address that specifically with some self-concept work, and therefore going forward, you will not have these bleeding out happen as much. If you cover the wound, there will no longer be bleeding, or at least if you address the wound, there'll be less bleeding, which basically means that by working on the deep-rooted problem, going forward, you will have a much better time. You will feel much better about yourself. And this has reflected in almost every single client that I've worked on this topic. So what you want to do is you want to write out that list. You want to read between the lines and see what those things are basically telling you about yourself. And then what I recommend you do is create a revision future-based affirmation. Now, the reason I go for revision future-based is because I think it covers all areas. So if your self-concept problem, taking the example that I just gave, is that of feeling as though you need to change in order to be good enough, an affirmation example that I recommend you do is, I always have been, and I always will be, more than good enough, exactly as I am, to, and then insert whatever your desire is. So to manifest or to be in a loving, passionate, committed relationship with the men I desire or the women I desire. Now, I will say that for this kind of self-concept affirmation, leave it general, i.e. the men or women I desire instead of your specific person, because we want to work on this internal story overall, not just specifically to our person. But the reason why this affirmation is amazing, and I'm just going to put it out there, it's amazing, always have been, revises any previous situations where you felt like you weren't good enough, which changes that internal story. Always will be, I know it's a future-based thing, and I always recommend not to go future-based, but by saying always have been, you've kind of covered the past and the present, and therefore the future thing kind of just gives you that reassurance going forward. More than good enough, exactly as I am, covers your self-concept worth of, yeah, actually, I'm more than good enough, and it addresses the deep wound of exactly as I am by saying that you don't need to change in order to manifest the relationships that you want, which covers that deep wound of constantly feeling like you as an individual need to shift. So far, always have been covers the past, revises all of your previous experiences. Always will be will give you some sort of reassurance going forward. Good enough exactly as I am covers the actual self-concept problem. And then to be in a loving, passionate, committed relationship with the men or women I desire covers what you want to experience, which means you've revised all the negative in the past, you're going to get what it is that you want, and you feel more than good enough. What this does is it actually addresses that wound. And the more that you reflect on this affirmation, the more that you claim this to be true for yourself, the more that you will find you do not need to keep saying, I'm magnetic, I'm attractive, I'm this, I'm unique, I'm this, I'm this, I'm this. Because all of that was a byproduct of your deep wound bleeding out. By addressing the deep wound, you will no longer have bleeding, therefore you no longer have to keep feeling like you need to change yourself to be good enough. Now this was just one example, but you get where I'm going at it. Write down all of the things that you feel like are wrong with your self-concept, read between the lines and see what the topic is that seems to be coming up over and over between the lines, and then address that using the affirmation format I just gave you. And I can assure you, I know it sounds simple, that is all you need to do. I have had clients over the past couple of months that I've been working on this that have come to me near enough distraught or feeling like they are worthy and deserving of nothing. I've even had people say, like, I just don't see a point in me living anymore. I've given them this affirmation by working through their specific situation, and within less than a week, a complete turnaround. They feel so much better. This affirmation format and way of working on it is incredible. And I'm basically putting myself out of a job by giving you this. But honestly, it's amazing. The next component is how you perceive the topics you are involved in. So again, we're going to use relationships just because I think it's the easiest one to do. I call this the feedback loop. Now, the reason why it's the feedback loop is because often this kind of thing will happen because of something you've heard when you were younger, or something that you would have heard, like, or experienced, in relationships, just as the example if we're using relationships. Now, this can be in the form of hearing your mum, like I mentioned earlier, say men and or your dad say, why bother marrying a woman? She's just going to leave you anyway and take half your money, and things like that. Or it could show up in the form of, because of your negative self-concept, like previously, you now feel that every time you fall in love with someone, they run away. And then that's your new feedback loop. And you will find that going forward, when it comes to relationships, every time you fall in love with someone, they end up running away. So the second component is the feedback loop, and this is obviously where the everyone is you pushed out comes into play, because if you have the assumption that every time you fall in love with someone, they then run away, you will come across people that reflect that, because they are your assumptions pushed out. Now, generally, by working on self-concept and really revising a story like I just gave you, that should have a knock-on effect and make this component better. However, just in case you need to do work on it, very similar to what I just gave you, i.e., understand what the story is that you have about relationships. So if it is, for example, let's take the thing of men and let's say, for example, your mum always used to say that. You now have this story, you now have men showing up to reflect that to you, and therefore you now have the feedback loop that the men that you meet are just not worth anything, they're just not good enough to be with, or they just hurt you, or XYZ thing. So, using the same principles that we just had in the previous one, you will take this story in. You will notice that you have this story, and then you'll understand where it came from, or get just a clear understanding. And then using the same kind of affirmation structure or format, let's, again, using this example of men ain't worth it, I always have been, and I always will be, in relationships with men that are more than good enough and treat me amazingly to be in healthy relationships. You know, that was just off the top of my head, may not be the best way to word it. However, the aim for this is to understand that you see topics, or you see relationships, or you see these things, and you are now shifting the way that you've perceived them, the story that you've picked up over however many years you've been living this feedback loop, and you're now shifting the past, shifting the future, shifting what your experience is and what you want going forward. That's obviously addressing the relationships themselves. You can have your own self-concept one as well to say, you know, I always have been, always will be more than good enough to be in relationships with men who show up for me in the way that I desire them to, or always have been, always will be in relationships that are healthy and make me feel special and prioritized. And you see where I'm going with it. The aim is to basically take how you understand this feedback loop and then basically just shift that story in your mind using the affirmation structure. But that's the second component. It's quite a simple one, to be honest, which is why this segment isn't that long. But that's the second one, of noticing the pattern that you have with relationships based on feedback that you either received as you were growing up or from actual relationships you've experienced. Take that in, understand this assumption that you have on that topic. And obviously this is a relationship example, but you can do the same thing with money. I.e., every time I work harder, I seem to just be given more work, just as an example. And then address it, and then going forward. And that should change your perception of relationships, money, careers, houses, whatever it is, to then be more in line with whatever it is that you want. The third component is how you perceive other people to perceive you. Now, this one of the three first components, I think is probably the least important, but it still is very much important, so definitely don't miss this step. But the reason why I think it's the least important is because if you have a good deep self, a good self-concept, you will more than likely not have to deal with people showing up in this negative way where they don't show up for you in the way that you want them to. Now, the only reason that people will have experiences where people show up for them in this way is because they didn't feel pretty much good enough for them in the first place. An example, let's say, for example, you want a pay rise. Most people won't ask for a pay rise because they feel like they're not good enough for a pay rise. Therefore, because they feel they're not good enough for a pay rise, they then assume their manager will not give them a pay rise because their manager is going to also see them as not good enough for a pay rise. So if they adjust their initial self-concept, if they adjust the way that they initially perceive themselves, they would more than likely not have the assumption that their manager thinks that they're not good enough for a pay rise. Because if you see yourself as worthy and deserving, and genuinely worthy and deserving, like you've done the deep-rooted self-concept stuff that I spoke about in part one, and not just the surface level, you know, good enough woo-woo stuff, you will get to a point where you're like, actually, no, I'm the shit, and I deserve this pay rise. And therefore, because you see that about yourself, you more than likely won't see that about the other person. Or you more than likely won't see the other person seeing that you're not good enough. Now, that is how I perceive it. And the reason why I think a lot of people don't have this experience where they do all the self-concept work, but their person still reflects the negative, is because I think they are just doing the surface level self-concept work and not actually addressing that root cause, therefore actually genuinely shifting their entire self-being. But To aid with this, just in case you are in this scenario, what you need to do basically is ask yourself, what do I think this person thinks about me in a way that will not get me my desire? What limitations do I think that this person sees about me? Then once you've kind of got this all written down, you want to have a clear understanding. So if it's the pay rise thing, maybe you'll think that your manager thinks you don't work hard enough, or that you're just too inexperienced, or things of that nature. You'll just get a clear understanding of, my manager thinks this about me, this, and this about me, and that is what stops them from giving me that pay rise. Now you have a clear understanding of what you assume to be true about them. Now you have a clear understanding of what your everyone is you pushed out is pushing out. You have the assumptions that they think this about you, and that's why they're not giving you that pay rise. So now you want to do the exact same thing as what you did in part 1, but including the things that this person is involved in. So if it's like inexperience and not working hard enough, you could change it to, I always have been and I always will be more than valued as an employee by insert manager, enough for them to give me this amazing pay rise. Again, just off the top of my head, you could probably word it a lot better, but that kind of affirmation, because what this does, addresses the past, it addresses all of your previous concerns about not being a good enough person, addresses the future just to give you that little bit of reassurance, addresses the problem, you think that they think you're not valuable enough yet, or that you don't work hard enough, or all of those kind of things, so it addresses that. And then you address your assumptions of them. You're saying that they think I'm actually valuable enough to give me this pay rise. And by saying this pay rise, we're implying that it's in existence right now. This then changes how you perceive them to perceive you, which, due to everyone as you pushed out, will change their assumptions or your assumptions of them, therefore changing their actions towards you. And then that will help you get that pay rise. Very simple, just take in all the information that you see as true for your specific person or your manager or your parents or whatever, create an affirmation that revises the past, the future, and what's going on right now. Start claiming that to yourself, and they will shift to match it. Editing Matthew here. There is one thing that I forgot to mention in that last point. Now, everyone as you pushed out obviously means that what you assume to be true is basically how other people are going to show up for you. So there is another element to that I wanted to address, and that is the idea that you may assume them to not do something because of something on their accord also. It doesn't necessarily have to be to do with you. For example, let's take the job example. You assume that they can't give that pay rise because the company doesn't have money to do so. So that obviously doesn't necessarily directly reflect that you're not good enough to have it. The company just doesn't have it. Now, obviously, because everyone as you pushed out, that would be a limiting belief based on like that kind of stuff. By having that thought in your mind, that will also play out for you. Your manager will also be like, oh yeah, we can't give you the pay rise because the company doesn't have money for it. So this also ties very similarly into what I said earlier about the self-concept, and people have their person not reflecting their self-concept, but everyone else does. Similar instance here. So another thing to work on this final point, if you would like to, doesn't directly correlate to self-concept, but it does directly correlate to the everyone as you pushed out. Look deeper into why you assume they won't do it, not just from because of your self-worth and self-value, but also from an overall perspective. So using a relationship example, if you feel like your person wouldn't do it because they have a fear of commitment, that will be something that you're assuming about them and then being pushed out, everyone as you pushed out. So adjust those assumptions also by coming to understand what is holding them back from their own perspective. Now, it won't directly correlate to self-concept work, but it will directly correlate to the everyone as you pushed out, which, based on what I said at the beginning of concept involving self, is something to be worth doing here. Another thing I also wanted to mention, which I realize now that I'm going back through editing, a lot of what I'm talking about here seems like I'm talking about like only limiting beliefs and stuff like that. The reason why is because obviously this video is an aim to help you get to a better position. Once you work on these things, what will happen is going forward, you won't have to work on these things anymore. You won't have to do as much living in the end half the time because you'll already naturally have a better concept involving self and therefore receive a better outcome going forward. So all of this stuff is more like the setting the roots for an amazing life going forward, and then that's when you can have those quick and easy successes of living in the end or doing a couple of affirmations and then boom, reality happens. So that's what this is doing. This video is setting the groundwork for all of that. So it's not all doom and gloom. It does end up coming into an amazing life. You can end up living like me, Sammy, Manifesting with Kimberly, all of those people who just seem to just get it, you know? That's what this is. This is the groundwork to get to that point. So thank you for, allowing me to take some more of your time. Now let's get into the part where I think I sell myself. If you've enjoyed this video so far, be sure to leave me a like and a comment just to let me know. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. And when you do, click that bell icon so you don't miss one of my future videos. I look forward to all your amazing comments. Now into the final point. The fourth and final component is how you act as an individual. Now, this one is more about just your operations as opposed to sort of potential limitations or self-concept work that you need to do. But what you need to do for this is you need to understand the mindset, the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions. And this point will include sort of living in the end as well. So this one isn't entirely self-concept only, but it's just one of those things that's good to do. Because, and I did a collaboration video with I Am God LOA the other day, which kind of goes into this, but I think there's a difference between living in the end and basically becoming the person who has your desire, And I know many people, the wording of that may not necessarily be true, because I know something like living in the end means a certain thing. But what I mean is just non-stop affirming to yourself that you are in a desire without actually addressing the version of yourself you need to be to have said desire. So using the money thing as that I gave as an example, if I currently have £20,000 a year and I want to earn £60,000 a year, I 100% can receive that desire by affirming I am earning £60,000 per year. The only problem is, if you do not become a new version of yourself that matches and aligns with that desire, you more than likely will end up losing it not long after anyway. If you oversaturate your mind by doing the affirmations 24/7, you will get that desire, because what you would dominantly assume and think is what you end up receiving. So you can receive that by just non-stop, I'm earning 60,000, earning 60,000, earning 60,000, all day, every day. But then once you get that desire, because you never shifted yourself, you never became a new version of yourself that actually has that desire internally, you will still be operating as the person who has that 20,000. Therefore, as soon as you stop beelining at 60,000, your reality will slowly begin to mold back to what your 20,000 version of yourself is experiencing. Because when you don't actually shift yourself, you will not shift your mannerisms, your actions, your thoughts, your feelings, your reactions, all of that kind of stuff. When you just beeline with affirmations of your end result and only affirmations of your end result and don't do the rest of the work that we've spoken about here with working on your self-concept, you don't shift as an individual. You don't become the person that has it, you just say it enough to make it happen. And this is why so many people get their relationship and then lose it immediately after. Because they just have not done the work that's caused them to lose it in the first place. They haven't actually done the work that held them without that desire in the first place. They've just affirmed over and over and over and over and over and over and over again enough to make it happen. The subconscious mind takes that in because that's what you're dominantly telling to yourself, pushes it out, you experience it, you stop affirming so much because you think, oh, well, they're here now. The old insecurities, the old doubts, the old fears that you never actually addressed start to come up, you end up losing them again. This is exactly why that kind of pattern seems to happen. Or people that experience hot and cold behavior. They start to do good, they get some movement, they kind of rein it in a bit because I can't be bothered to do it anymore, I've got my person giving me hot behavior, all of the previous concerns come up, then the person starts going cold, and then they're like, well, I don't want this, let me affirm again. They start affirming, they get hot, they pull back, it goes cold, and that's why that pattern happens. So this key component is about combining self-concept with living in the end. And that is, understand the mindset of the person you would be if you had your desire, and then operate in that now. So if it's money, and you want to earn more money, understand, if I was earning £60,000 per year, what would I be doing? Well, I probably wouldn't be concerned about tipping waiters or waitresses. I wouldn't really be looking at clothing labels. I wouldn't really be going, oh, am I going to be able to pay the bills this month? I wouldn't be doing all of these things. What would I be doing instead? Instead, I wouldn't be bothered about clothing labels. I would be tipping waiters and waitresses. I would be doing fun things. Now, I do want to preface, you do not have to just buy clothes without looking at the labels just because you're rich in your mind. It's the mindset, not necessarily the actions. If you're looking at a label through an element of concern, then you're in a wrong place. If you look at a label and think, oh, that's pennies, even if it's way out of your budget, you're still thinking from the end of, oh, well, that's pennies, and you're gradually going to be giving that story to your subconscious mind. So you don't actually have to just go and buy clothes willy-nilly. You don't just have to go and tip the waiter 90% of the bill just because you're rich. It's the mindset behind it. It's the mindset of looking at a label and going, oh, that's pennies, I could afford that. It's the mindset of being like, oh, that bill isn't very much. I could tip the waiter 90% and it wouldn't even scratch the surface of my wallet. It's the mindset of looking at ornaments in the shop and thinking, oh, me and my specific person would love this in our house. It's the mindset behind it. It's understanding why you're doing something or what it is that you should be doing if you were in your end result, and then doing that. This is actually why taking action in a 3D doesn't matter. It's the thought process behind it. Messaging your specific person, not a problem. Messaging them through fear, problem. Messaging your specific person and then them giving you a negative reaction and you don't care, you just kind of go, oh, all right, and go on about your day, not a problem. Having them give you a negative reaction and then using it as reference for why you can't get your specific person, that's the problem. It's the mindset and the thoughts behind the actions that matter, not actually the action itself. It's not that I donated to charity that makes me seem abundant. It's the fact that I'm willing to donate without needing anything in return that makes me abundant. I could tell my subconscious mind, or I could think about donating to charity, or I could even just say to myself over and over and over again that I have more than enough money to donate to charity, and I will still get the same result. Because it's the element of thinking as though that you can. Now, I do recommend that if you're going to donate to charity, actually do it, just because you'll be helping other people and that'll make you feel better. But you get where I'm coming at. It's the thoughts behind it. So, to basically clarify, mix your self-concept with living in the end by understanding the thoughts, the feelings, and the operations or actions of the version of yourself who has your desire, and then try to consciously do those on a daily basis. It's great to have affirmations, it's great to visualize, it's great to script. But if you're affirming or scripting and visualizing for a collective 2 hours of the day, but then you go shopping for a solid 3 hours and the whole time you're like, oh, I haven't got the money for that, I haven't got the money for that. Or every time you see a couple in the street, you're like, why can't that be me? What mindset are you operating from more dominantly? The one that's more unconscious, or the one that you are doing consciously but not that much during the day? See what I mean? So try to understand the thoughts, the feelings, and the actions of the version of yourself who has your desire, and consciously do that. Consciously think, feel, and act in that way, even if you don't take the actions. Even if you only think, I can afford that outfit, even though it's £1,000 more than what you can afford. Even if you only think that ornament would look amazing in my house with a specific person. Even if you think, oh, I'd love to see that new movie in the cinema. I'm going to ask a specific person if they want to come with me. And of course they're going to say yes, because they're my boyfriend or girlfriend. The thoughts matter, not the actions. You don't have to take the actions, but the idea of taking the actions is more than enough, as long as it's from the end result. I really hope this video has helped. I don't know how long it's going to be, but I really hope this deep dive into self-concept and everyone as you pushed out is giving you a clear understanding of how to go about it. In very quick overview, just so that you guys can, I can recap it. Self-concept. Look deeper into the actual problem that is creating the bleeding or the symptoms of these things you feel like you need to change. And then actually create a proper, deep down self-concept affirmation that covers your specific self-concept problem. Revise the past, address the future, address the present, and actually address your problem. Having all of these generic online ones is fine and they help a little bit, but they won't ever actually get you to a place you need to be if you have a genuine self-concept hole that keeps being targeted. The second thing, look into relationships. What patterns do you see? What feedback have you received from the 3D or from people in your life? And do the same as part one. Address it, revise the past, address the future, decide what you want to experience from relationships right now, and claim that it's in existence right now. The third part, how do other people see you? What do you perceive is the reason that other people will not give you what it is that you want? Address all of those, understand what the overarching theme is, and then create the revision of the past, the future, address the current, and address their thoughts of you, and claim that they're doing it right now. And then the fourth component, understand the thoughts, feelings, and actions of the version of yourself who has your desire, and consciously go throughout the day using those thoughts, feelings, and actions. And that is self-concept, and everyone is you pushed out down to basically every minute detail that I can remember while trying to affirm this all in one take. Yeah, basically, because if I have missed anything, please comment it down below. It is a long video, so I might have missed a couple of things here and there. I don't think so, But I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I really hope this gives you a clear understanding. If it has, be sure to leave me a like, comment, subscribe, and let's get this video pushed out to as many people as possible so that it can help as many people as possible. If you obviously want to work with me deeper on all of this, by all means, check out down below, and I'll catch you amazing people in the next one. Bye-bye.